8 concepts include calculating the number of times interest is compounded, so N, converting to an adjusted annual interest rate in decimal form, which is I, substitution into the formula A equals P times 1 plus I to the exponent N, understanding various compounding periods, and recognizing the value of P for use in the formula A equals P times 1 plus I to the exponent N. So compound interest is when interest is earned on interest. So unlike simple interest, it's just on the principal amount. Compound interest is exactly how it sounds. It compounds. It earns more money on the money that you're making. So interest is commonly calculated or compounded at regular intervals. These intervals can vary, so they can change from time to time. Below is a list of commonly used intervals and the number of times per year interest earned on interest is calculated. So if you see the word annually, that means it's calculated 1 time per year or compounded 1 time per year. Semi-annually means 2 times per year. Quarterly is 4 times. Monthly is 12 times. Semi-monthly is 24 times. Weekly is 26 times. Weekly is 52 times. Bi-weekly is 26 times. And daily is 365 times in a year. So these words we have been using since the beginning of the year. So they're going to be important for this lesson. So to calculate compound interest, the formula A equals P times 1 plus I to the exponent N is used. The values of P and I and N must be substituted into the above formula. So you're going to put those numbers into the formula to find A, which represents the amount of compound interest, the amount the compound interest has made in addition to the initial amount. So it's the total amount calculated. So we're going to use this calculation in order to roll in the initial investment, so the principal, like we learned in the last unit, with the amount of interest earned over the compounding period. So we need to be able to find N. N is an exponent here, so you're going to need your calculator for this, a scientific one, or if you're using an iPhone or something, you're going to have to turn it horizontally so you can get the scientific calculator. N represents the number of times the loan or investment is compounded over a lifetime. So calculating N in the formula is right here. This is an exponent. So in order to put a number in for this exponent, you first have to multiply the number of compounds per period. So that would be something like this. If it's semi-annually, it's 2 times. So you would multiply 2 times the number of years that the money is going to be invested. So you have to pay attention to the word that's in the question and the number of years. So here's an example. It says, what is the value of N if the loan is compounded monthly for 3 years? So this is key here, compounded monthly. How many times a year would you earn interest if it's compounded monthly? Yes, 12. So we're going to use the formula. N is equal to the number of compounds per year times the number of years. So we know that monthly means 12, so it's 12 compounds in 3 years. So simply take the numbers, 12 times 3, and multiply them. So when you substitute this into your formula, you have to do this part, you have to do this part first in order to substitute that number in.
What are you playing?
Example 2 says, what is the value of N if the loan is compounded quarterly for 5 years? So quarterly, what does that mean? How many times in a year? Quarterly is 4 compounds in 5 years, which is given in the question. So you would have to multiply 4 times 5 to get 20. So this N value would go into your A equals P times 1 plus I to the exponent N equation. So you can practice these support questions. You can pause it, use the words, multiply it by the number of years. That's going to give you your N value. So part of this formula also requires us to find I. So I is a little bit different from the simple interest formula. I is an annual interest rate in the decimal form divided by the number of compounds per year. So you're kind of doing a lot with this to find your I value. So that was from last lesson. I'm going to open up a blank page. Just takes a while. There we go. And I'll show you the steps involved. So let's close that one. Don't save. Sorry, I'm not the most technologically competent person. So for interest rate in decimal form divided by the number of compound periods. So it says, what is the value of I with an interest rate of 12%? So remember, when we are solving this 12%, we need to put it in a decimal form. So you have to take, my goodness, you have to take that 12 and divide it by 100 first. So this is our rate, but we're not looking for a rate right now. We're looking for that I value. So this is always the first step you have to do. Every time you see a percent, change it to a decimal. So the value of I compounded quarterly. So we have to take the annual interest rate in decimal form, which we have done, and then you're going to divide it by the number of compounds per year. So this is the compounds per year, compounded quarterly. That means 4. So here you see our 12% as a decimal divided by 4 compound periods per year. And then we get an I value of 0.3. So what is the value of an I with an interest rate of 8%? Okay, right away, 8%. Take that 8, divide it by 100, and you're going to get 0.08. So you know you're going to have to put that rate as a decimal. So you're going to need to calculate the annual interest rate in decimal form divided by the number of compounds per year. So semi-annually. Semi-annually, how many times in a year? If you said 24, you would be right. So let's move this down, and we can see here that we've taken our 8% as a decimal. Oh, shoot, semi-annually, not semi-monthly, semi-annually, twice per year. Hopefully you guys are on the ball. So it's twice, semi-annually, 2 times. So taking that 0.8, dividing it by 2, you're going to get an I value of 0.04. So again, if you want, you can do these support questions, practicing putting in your I value. So pause it, try these out, and then keep going. So finding the P value. P represents the initial value of the loan or investment. So calculating the value of P in the formula, and this P is here, it's the principal. So this is normally given in the question. What is the P value if 5% is borrowed at an interest rate of 7% compounded daily. The p-value is the initial investment, $500. This would be your rate. So first thing you would do with that is change it to a decimal, and then you would have to divide it by the compound period, which is compounded daily. So this would have to be divided by 365, and then you would have to find your n value. But we don't have an n value because it doesn't say how many years this investment. It's an incomplete question, but this is more about recognizing your p value here. So again, you can do these support questions. You can read the statements, identify what the initial investment is or your p value, and then you can move on. So here we're going to calculate compound interest. So if you need a break, take a break right now before you come back to this. Welcome back. So calculating compound interest. Each of the values of p, I, and n are needed in the formula a equals p times 1 plus I to the exponent n to calculate compound interest. A represents the total investment of the loan and all the interest earned. For example, if $5,000 was invested and $200 was made in interest, the total amount, you would add 5,000 and 200 to give you 5,200. So that is the A value. So let's look at calculating this compound interest. So it says Johnny invests $800 and pays 8% compounded quarterly for 5 years. How much is the investment worth at the end of the 5th year? So you need to be able to identify your variables from the equation A equals P times 1 plus I to the exponent n. So that's the first thing we're going to do here. So let's bring this back up. There we go. Okay, so just looking here, so our P value, what is the initial investment? 800. So this is in your note as well, but sometimes going through it like this helps a bit. Pays 8% compounded quarterly. So 8%, we know that that's our interest rate, but that's going to make up part of our I value. So we need to take that 8% and divide it by 100. And we're going to get 0.08 right here. But we also remember from our note that we need to divide it by the compounding period. So this says it's compounded quarterly for 5 years. So we need to divide that by 4, and that's where we get the I value of 0.0, oh my gosh, 2. It's getting late in the day, kids. So that's where this number is coming from. So we calculate the I by dividing it by 100 and then dividing it by the compound period. So our N value, our question says it's compounded quarterly for 5 years. So in order to calculate our N value, we take our compound period of 4 and multiply it by the number of years that the investment is going to be in the investment. So this is 20. So if you notice, when you're calculating your I value and your N value, the number that you divide your interest by and the number that you multiply the years by is the same number. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to figure out the I and the N. So now that we have our numbers, we need to put it into our formula. So this is the formula we're using. We've put our principal 800. 1 is just a number, so that stays. We put our I value in for I, and our exponent n is the 20. So this needs to be solved in order of operations. So the first thing you need to do, you may have a calculator that does this, or you may not. I will show you. So when you have, I'm going to go from this line here. So A equals 800 times 1 plus 0.02, and this is to the exponent, I'm going to write it in, 20. So when you solve this, you have to do it in order of operations. So what that means is that you have to do the brackets first. So A gets put there again. 800, haven't done anything with. We need to solve this set of brackets first. So that is 1.02 because we're just adding 1 plus 0.02, and then we are keeping our exponent of 20. So order of operations says next we need to do the exponent. So we're going to have A equals 800 times, and our base is 1.02. So in your calculators, you're going to put 1.02 with your exponent button, 20, and that's going to give you approximately 1.49. Oops, that's a 2. 1.49. And then lastly, you're going to multiply 800 times 1.49, and that is going to give you approximately 1192. So you can see here that this number is not the same as this number. I'm going to give you a second to think about why that might be. It has something to do with this. So if you think about that for a second. And we're back. If you kept more decimal places, you are going to get closer to this number. So all that means is that you've rounded it. I know that this is very close to this. They're only less than $4 off. Just over $4. No, it's less than $4. I was right. Long day, like I said. So if you're rounding it, I will be aware of that because the numbers will be close enough. So don't worry about rounding. This reminds you what you need to do first. You need to look at the brackets first. Then you need to do the exponents, and then division and multiplication in the order they appear. So when you solve this, it's the brackets, it's the exponent, and then you multiply. So just like we did in this example, we did the brackets first, we did the exponent, and then we multiplied those two numbers. So example 2, it's much of the same thing. So a $1,500 loan is taken out at 12% compounded monthly for 3 years. How much interest is added to the loan at the end of the 3rd year if no payment has been made? So you're basically doing the same thing. You find your principal, you take your 12%, change it to a decimal, that's this number here, and then it's compounded monthly, so you divide it by 12 to get this number, and then you take your n value, remember it's your compound periods times your years to get 36 there. Once you plug the numbers in, your p, your I, and your n, remember brackets first, so here you would have 1.1 or 1.01 to the exponent 36. You would get 1.43 once you solve that, and then if you multiply it by 1,500, you are going to get this answer of $2,146.15. The reason that they're taking 1,500 away from here because it's asking what the interest is earned. Remember, A is the total amount of your principal investment plus your interest. So in order to calculate just what you earned in interest, you have to take out that initial principal value. So in total, this investment earned $646.15. These are some support questions you can try. Otherwise, your key questions are here. So you're going to be finding the end value. You're going to be finding the I, indicating the P value from these questions, and then determining some investments. So this is a lot of work. Ask questions if you have any, and let me know. This is hard. I think this one will be a little bit difficult. And if you have questions, don't just struggle alone. Message me, let me help you. Thanks, everyone.